Hello, welcome to Straightforward. Over the past 2 weeks, a large number of media reports have appeared suggesting ISIS has destroyed many historical sites in Iraq, as well as a number of mosques and churches in Mosul. Some members of Iraq's Yazidi minority are turning on their Arab neighbors, staging deadly reprisals against Sunni villagers they believe collaborated in atrocities inflicted by Islamic states on their community. Yazidis are returning to their northern home area of Sinjar and are uncovering one of mass graves after another after evidence of Islamic State's rule. The Christians aren't returning at all, it seems. Before we look at this and the recent damage affecting the Assyrian heritage in Nineveh, let me welcome our guest here at the studio, Father Ephraim Ozan of the Syriac Orthodox Church. Welcome to our show today. And before we get into our discussion, let's have a look at this brief report.
Last week, the United Nations Human Rights Office said that Islamic State fighters may have committed genocide against the minority Yazidi community in Iraq, as well as crimes against humanity and war crimes against civilians, including children. The report said captured women and children were treated as spoils of war and often subjected to rape or sexual slavery. The report came just days after Islamic State militants kidnapped 90 Christians in northeast Syria in their latest blow to the ancient Christian presence in the Middle East. Another video was also released by militants claiming allegiance to ISIS that appeared to show the beheading of 21 Egyptian Copts in Libya. ISIS militants have often singled out Christian and other minorities for persecution. Thousands of Christians fled Iraq's Mosul and Nineveh after ISIS's lightning advance last summer. The ISIS rampage through Iraq's Nineveh plains forced out Chaldean Christians and other minorities from areas in which they had coexisted for nearly 2,000 years. Maronite Archbishop Paul Nabil al-Sayar said ISIS was targeting all those who did not believe in its ideology. The Archbishop said they do not want to coexist with either Christians or Muslims who do not believe in their mission. But the Yazidis and Christians are not the only minorities in the Middle East who are being targeted. The Assyrians, Shias and Kurds, amongst others, are also victim to the group's atrocities. But how will heads of these ethnic minorities confront this threat, and will they trust their political partners to protect them?
Father Ephraim, tell us about the cultural and historic significance of Christian entities in the Middle East.
First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting us in today for Levant TV.
You're welcome.
It's really honored to be here with you, Carl.
Thank you.
And to answer your question, we Syriac people, or Aramaic, we speak the language of our Lord Jesus Christ. Our people and the community, we have been living in Middle East for 6,000 years, around 6,000 years. Since 4000 BC. And we embraced the Christian faith since the 1st century, so we considered as the first Christian. And even before, when St. Paul, St. Peter established our church in Antioch, and Antioch is North Syria and South Turkey. Our people are really, they shaped the history of the area. They were before Islam, before all other people coming to this area. So, as all Middle East, from Iraq, Syria, even Palestine. Jordan, all this area, where all Aramaic people, Syriac people. And we are a traditional church. We keep our liturgy, we celebrate our liturgy in Aramaic. We still speak Aramaic, we pray in Aramaic. We keep our language because we're proud that we speak the language of our Lord Jesus Christ. And it is really hurt us when it's difficult to us when someone forced us to leave our country, that we think that we leave our history behind. And that
you're talking about Iraq, of course.
Iraq and Syria and these people, because we see now in London here and how the people are immigration.
Yeah, they're coming from the Middle East.
From Middle East to here. So I don't know. The future of these our people really
is endangered.
In danger.
So do you think, Father Ifram, what is in your opinion the elements behind the survival of these Christian minorities in the Levant so far until very recently, what happened when they were eradicated? What has kept them, despite the Ottoman threat, the Mamluks, and any other form of oppression that we witnessed in the Middle East historically? They resisted all that, and they still exist, they still own big monasteries and everything. But what was the element of their survival, behind their survival?
What do you mean by survival? Where are they? Do you mean in Mosul? Where I haven't seen any...
I meant historically they survived the oppression of the Ottomans, for example, or the Mamluks. So, but nowadays they are being oppressed again under ISIS. So what was the element that helped them survive, that might help them nowadays as well?
The only thing is that they survive because they want just to live in peace. That's our always we Christian. We just want to live in peace in Middle East. We don't like to fight other people, but how can we say it's survived? Like since we were the people who live in the area. Now they call us minorities. We are not minorities. We are the original people.
Yes, indigenous people. Definitely. And what, in your opinion, is the difference today between the situation of the ethnic minorities in Syria, be they Druze, Kurds, or Christians, and the minorities in Iraq? You know, they've been completely displaced, eradicated. So what kept them more safe in Syria, do you think? Is it the political establishment of President Assad compared to Nouri al-Maliki's government, which is perhaps not as protective of its minorities? What do you think is the difference?
In my opinion, both are suffering. Both minorities in Iraq and Syria are suffering, and similar situation. But the difference is maybe some minorities are supported. Who support them? We don't know. Some minorities, not all of them, but we can see that like it's. And Christian in Iraq are not supported at all by the government, by anyone. In Christian and Yazidi as well, there is no one supported them.
Yes, yes.
So I think there is someone supported them, and as well, the government of al-Maliki, they did nothing to the minorities to the Christian or Yazidi, when see in front of his eyes, in his country, when he is a prime minister, he has done nothing to survive these people when they display, when they kill the Yazidi and Christian people, and Shabak and all these minorities. So I think the difference is the government as well. I think al-Assad is supporting the minorities more than, and he want to rescue his country.
Well, hopefully that will take place sometime soon. Now, when it comes to Haidar al-Abadi, do you think in Iraq nowadays, will it be a little bit better than the times of Nouri al-Maliki, do you think, when it comes to those minorities? Do you think he will do better?
I would say just we hope so. He has been like now for a few months, quite a few months. So we don't know if he says that he would do more, but nothing happened so far. And my family, they displaced are from Mosul. They were living in Mosul, and now my family living in Kurdistan, Iraq, and the only support they get from the church.
And now we are joined by Mr. Barem Behram of the Assyrian General Conference. Welcome to our discussion.
Thank you.
Mr. Behram, Assyrian artifacts from Nineveh and surrounding sites such as Khorshabad and Balawat have been destroyed. How would you assess the damage there?
Well, you know, since June 2014, when ISIS took over, forcibly took over, you know, Mosul, around 200 Assyrian Christian in general, they flee the area, and they are stranded between ISIS and the Kurdish region, and they are living in a very critical condition. Some of them manage to reach, you know, Turkey or Lebanon or Jordan in order to you know, to leave the countries to the European country. You know, same scenario happened in Syria.
Yes.
You know, last month when ISIS terrorists attacked our villages, which is situated in the south of River Khabur, they burned our churches, and we have at least 10 Assyrian Christians being killed, and you know, around 250 Assyrian being taken hostages. Half of them, they are women and children, and some of them, they managed to flee, you know, to the area which is more safer. Most likely, you know, recently the ISIS also, you know, the ISIS, they targeted our historical artifact.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
the what they call they attacked our historical artifact.
Yes, the heritage protected by the UNESCO actually in the city of Nineveh. Now, do you believe, Mr. Behram, that there is an ideological motive so that the Islamic State is destroying this Assyrian heritage, specifically the Assyrian?
Yes, of course. You know, I mean, since, you know, the topple of the regime, you know, Assyrian, they are marginalized in the Iraqi constitution and the decision maker, and they were targeted to the terrorists. And there were many agenda, you know, forcing Assyrian to be displaced and evacuate in general Iraq and Middle East from the Assyrian Christian for the benefit of some inhabitants. And what we demand, you know, what we demand that to be established a safe haven for the Assyrian, you know, under supervision of United Nations, to be, you know, supported politically and economically and security as well, and then furthermore to be established as Syria region according to the Iraqi constitution, you know, Article 114, 119, which authorized to establish an Assyrian region, taking under consideration, you know, the census 1957, because we got 100 of our villages and lands being occupied by the Kurdish leaders.
Yes, and do you think you will get support from the West when it comes to the Assyrian minority in Iraq, especially with what happened recently in Nineveh?
I mean, we are, you know, approaching the international organization and United Nations, and they have a moral support to the indigenous people, such as Assyrian. They have to implement, you know, article about the indigenous people, such as 314, to preserve the linguistic, to culture of the minorities, which they are threatened or facing genocide or demographic deviation. So we hope they will support our cause. As you know, Assyrian people, they are, you know, peaceful. They don't have militia So we need, to live in our country in a dignity and, as an equal citizens.
Do you think it is too late for the Assyrian community to go back to their hometowns?
No, it's not too late. We hope, the international organization or United Nations or what they call the political process to be changed, from sectarian and ethnicity to the equal citizenship. Then Assyrian and, even there is what they call a challenge to this policy, as Dr. Abadi is trying to, to establish an equal citizenship, but there is, challenges such as, terrorists, such as, corruption and reconciliation between the political parties, and also the dispute between the Kurdish region and the central government.
But Mr. Bayram, if the Islamic State will stay there, even if one day they were disarmed or dismantled, now those people have destroyed your heritage, your cultural heritage and historic heritage. Now, do you think that people like yourself who are displaced now to other Kurdistan, Iraq or other safe areas, do you think they will feel safe going back to these places?
Well, I mean, I am sure that, ISIS will be finished and, will be marginalized after, what they call international coalition start bombarding them, and the Iraqi army with the help of the, the volunteers, they will soon take over the occupied territory which been taken by the ISIS, and what they call the security will be established, and then the government should be, reconstruction the infrastructure and to try to make security and stability and, the build infrastructure to prevent, to allow the people to come back, because, why we left the country, because there is no security, stability, no jobs, nothing, economic wise is not that good after, oil prices, they are gone down. So we hope the situation will improve, and we are it is our homeland. We want to go back, but after, the security being implemented and infrastructure to be built and to be, modify the constitution of Iraq to be recognized an Assyrian, and the preamble of the, Iraqi constitution, there is no recognition for the Assyrian. So they have to recognize the Assyrian as indigenous people of Iraq and to be granted their national and human rights in their own homeland.
Mr. Baran Bayram of the Assyrian General Conference joined us via Skype. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you.
Father Ephraim, here in the West, what is the Orthodox Assyrian Syriac Church doing to help its followers in the Middle East? Especially the displaced followers, like you said, your family have to...
We Syriac Orthodox Church, we're trying every effort to help through contacting the media, governments, and the more important, raising money to send donations and from our people, contacting the charities. As I've mentioned, it's just the church who help the people who are really suffering in the displaced people in Middle East.
Not really the political leaders then?
No, not really.
Now, when it comes to the Syriac Orthodox Church, for example, as a minority there, is the monetary status of this institution good enough to support the displaced? For example, if you look at the Maronite Church in Lebanon, for example, it's a very rich institution. Is the Syriac Church as wealthy?
Not really. Our monasteries and churches and our all what we have like houses,
estates,
estates, all in Mosul. as all in Mosul and the villages around. So all gone and all occupied by ISIS. So they just have the donation from the people here, and that contacting the charities and churches as well, like Church of England, United Nations.
So they are cooperating.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
But it's not much and not enough. Not enough.
So after the eradication of the Christians of Al-Mosul in Iraq last year, the Lebanese Patriarch Bashar al-Ra'i led an initiative including all religious factions, and they traveled to Iraq to support these communities. Father Ephraim, how would you assess this initiative?
We thank him for this initiative. We thank he didn't go alone. He went with all the church leaders, including my patriarch, the patriarch of the Syriac Orthodox Church, More Ignatius Ephraim II, and the patriarch of the Catholic Church, Syrian Catholic, Yusuf III.
Right.
Yes, and all these patriarchs, they made our people feel they are not ignored, and make them feel better. And secondly, they send them donation. They give them money, and as well, it's here in London, because I forgot in the previous question. My Archbishop, His Eminence Archbishop Tuma Dawood, he went recently to Iraq and visited the displaced people one by one and give them money donation by himself. And we have like videos. He was crying when he's seeing this displaced people. They have no food, no medicine. So we doing our best. The patriarch and church leaders all doing their best to support the people, but with absence from the political leaders.
Now, here in the UK, there's this sort of new phenomenon where Church of England figures and even some Catholic priests have this affinity or close relations with the churches of the Middle East. Of course, your church being one of them, the Syriac Orthodox Church. Now, what about the Middle East itself? Are they as close to each other, honestly?
Of course they are. We are united. ISIS, when they killing, they say that you are a Christian. They don't say you are Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox. They never mention this. So, we are all united. We have in Iraq and Syria, we have like a council of the bishops for all the churches. They all get the donation from outside. They distributed to all people who are in need, really. So that's
a good phenomenon, actually.
Of course.
So let's now welcome Mr. Hassan Al-Katib, London-based documentary filmmaker. Welcome to our discussion.
Hi there.
So do you think, Mr. Al-Katib, there could have been any form of intervention from the Iraqi government or from the West when it comes to this?
It's obviously not a great idea to ask the West to intervene. They've not really done any good in the Middle East.
They have intervened when it comes to the Yazidis in Mount Sinjar.
And that's only because they actually intervened because ISIS came very close to Kurdistan and the Kurdish borders. And it's because they wanted to protect that particular area from ISIS, because Kurdistan are their allies. And in fact, American troops have also been a part of desecrating and destroying certain Iraqi artifacts in the region when they invaded Iraq in 2003. So they really haven't helped in any way. The Iraqi army or the government couldn't really do much about what ISIS is doing, primarily because in Mosul, when ISIS took over, they had fled the city just before ISIS took over. But now, Iraqi forces, alongside other military groups, are getting together and now are pushing onto a very strong offensive against ISIS, and they're hopefully going to be taking Mosul in the next few months. It is planned. So this is what the Iraqi government can do, and this is what we want them to do alongside the Syrian. There's a lot of coordination, by the way, with the Syrian army along the border, Iraqi-Syrian border. So this is what we should expect, that the Iraqis and the people living there, this is their land, they care about it more than anyone else, and therefore they should be left to defend what they hold dear.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Al-Khatib, do you think ethnic minorities in Nineveh or Al-Mosul will ever feel good about returning home when their millennial heritage has been destroyed?
Of course, it's not going to be great to have places of worship, shrines, other historical artifacts that people hold so dear are destroyed. But I mean, if you ask some of the Christians, some of the Yazidis and other minorities in those particular areas, they do say, there are some, and I'm hoping the majority have been saying that they will go back to those particular, to their own, land, their places, because the land is dear to them. This is where their forefathers, for many generations, for many centuries, have lived. This is something that they will not want to leave. And even if you ask many of the refugees, Iraqi refugees and Syrian refugees, and there's millions of them, they do not want to leave their land. Even the Palestinians now for many decades don't want to leave their land. So the land is very precious for them, despite they have lost, despite losing, despite losing all this, their buildings, monuments, things which they hold dear, they still want to go back to and reclaim their land. So no matter how much destruction is done, and I think, and I hope there will be a rebuilding process, because even for many centuries, and if you go back to the Mongol invasions, for instance, the Mongols destroyed mosques and other places of worship and buildings, and had destroyed many books and literature and learning. So there have been instances throughout history where in Iraq and other places in the region where things have been destroyed, and I think people have moved on. They've either rebuilt, they've carried on. So even though some places of worship have been destroyed in Mosul and other areas in Iraq, the Christians and other minorities and other Muslims should go there and should rebuild and should go back to a stable Iraq, a society where they used to live side by side for centuries, and this is still within the Iraqi culture and Iraqi mindset at the moment. ISIS has not been able to destroy that, and I think that is the most significant, achievement, that despite the efforts of outside forces to try and divide Iraq up, it hasn't been divided.
Hassan Al-Khatib, also show host and political researcher, joined us from London today. Many thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Father Afram, within the current political and military scene in the Middle East, what is the safest way ahead for the minorities in Iraq and Syria?
There's two ways, or there's two elements. The most important one is security. Our people in Iraq and Syria have been killed, displaced, kidnapped. We have kidnapped the bishops, the priests. We have More Gregorius, Johanna, the Archbishop of Aleppo, kidnapped with the other bishop from the Greek Orthodox Church. They both kidnapped about 2 years now, and no one knows about their fate. And the first one is security. So to be living in this way, the first one, to provide the security to this country. Second, it's economy. Economy is very important because our people are starving and no food and no medicine, and you see the situation in Iraq and Syria, and they have to provide something. But how to survive them? Now you say the safest way.
Yes.
It's I don't know, the government Iraqi and Syrian government
Yes.
should or must do something soon, because our people facing this genocide, and they clean the Middle East from, if they say they remove our people, all the they say I always say minorities, but they
Yes.
are indigenous people.
Yes.
So they remove our people from Middle East to other countries, and soon if they don't do something, so unfortunately you won't see any Christian, Yazidi, Shabaki, and all these minorities in Iraq anymore, or Syria anymore.
And now let's talk to British Iraqi actress Sarah Archer, joined us from London today. Thanks for being on the show.
Hi, how are you?
Yes, you met the Coptic Pope and other religious figures from the Middle East. How would you describe your affinity or your close ties with these figures representing religious and ethnic minorities in the Middle East?
Well, my mission started last year when I decided that I should take initiative to change the current events. And my mission is simple: to eradicate extremism between religions. And I was thinking of ways that I can do this. So I thought of a way to go direct to these leaders, direct to these heads of community, and tell them, listen, is what's going on, is it right? And all of them agreed, and all of them said, no, it's not right. So my aim was to go to them and deliver the message that they said back to the youth, so the youth can have some kind of information, not to follow the politically organized groups, especially like ISIS, because if the heads of these communities, they're very wise and they've been studying religion, most of them are philosophers in religion, are saying this is wrong, then why are the youth going to politically organized groups?
So how would you describe the awareness amongst the average British youth and citizens when it comes to the Middle East and the diversity in the Middle East, especially at times when most Muslims are denouncing what ISIS is doing, yet here in the UK things could be different when it comes to that?
To be honest with you, I think the British are educated when it comes to the Middle East and religion. I mean, in a sense, they're always there. They always want to try different foods, different cuisines, know about the culture. So we're more developed in more sense than others. But I blame the media. The media has a lot to do with this. For example, ISIS is a terrorist group.
Yes.
I do not know why they're affiliating it with Islam or it be having an Islamic State. So just because I say my color's red doesn't mean that I'm red. Okay, so just because they say, oh yes, we're an Islamic State, doesn't mean they are, because they're obviously terrorists and they have nothing to do with Arabs, they have nothing to do with the Middle East, they have nothing to do with religion. Now there is a problem because some Muslim heads are not saying that, okay, these are not Muslims. That's when the problem occurs. But I think in a sense the British public are aware of what's going on.
Let's see, Father Ephraim here at the studio. What do you have to say to add to that? Do you believe the media has a role to play there?
Yeah, I really agree that the media has. I really agree that the media has to do more and to support our people in Iraq and Syria, and as well as the government in Iraq and Syria must do more to support them.
And Sarah, will you have any efforts, perhaps as a member of the Portsmouth Youth Parliament? Would you be doing any efforts maybe to take this case even to Westminster?
You know, I was a part of the Portsmouth Youth Parliament, and I was there, and I did help it establish. I was part of the establishment. However, the Youth Parliament and the government here are so limited because they do have their own people, and as the Reverend was saying, they need to call, the Iraqis do need to call on their own countries. I mean, when I went to meet with the Reverend and the Archbishop, they welcomed me with open hands. There was no hidden agenda. There was nothing. They just welcomed me and helped me to pursue my aims. I mean, so many people have been going to Iraq. So many people have been trying to change the status quo, but they're being met with a wall. Okay, they're being met with a wall. They're saying they just can't get to these government officials. We're here in Westminster, sure, I can get to these government officials. Even if they don't see me today, they'll see me in a month. And this is what I respect about democracy. Okay, whereas in the Middle East, it's not that clear. You have to know someone to get somewhere, to meet someone, and if you do, you might get nowhere. So that's what I think. Something should change. I know Iraq is not stable, nor is the Middle East, but that stability also comes because we're not pulling together to help one another. And I think when that occurs, that's when small groups like ISIS won't have a little way to hide, you know?
Yes. And now we will get another point of view. Stay with us, Sarah, if you don't mind. Stay with us on the line. Father Ephraim, like former Miss UK Beauty was saying, obviously she has a say. She represents the youth in England, not just the beautiful youth, of course. Now, when it comes to she mentioned that people go from the West and they hit a wall when they try to help when it comes to Middle East and the protection of Middle East minorities. It seems to, as we heard from her, that the political leaders are not as cooperative as the religious figures over there, especially the ones she met in Egypt and elsewhere. So do you agree that the clergy are more efficient when it comes to that?
Yeah, I already say that the only representative of our displaced people are the church. There is no political representative in our church or a Christian representative. We really don't care about politics. We just care now about how to help our people and how to move with this situation. Yes. And how to help our people. And really, I 100% agree with Miss Sarah Archer about what she said, that unfortunately, that we trying our best and with small sources, and the government have all the money. They don't care about, they just care about their positions, about how to get money from the government to their own banks.
But Sarah Archer, stay with us as we welcome now Mr. Nidal Al-Aisi, political analyst, joining us from Syria. Welcome to our discussion. Mr. Nidal,
thank you very much. Welcome.
Mr. Nidal, in a recent article you wrote on the occasion of the Persian Nowruz festives, you wrote that above all what is happening in the Middle East is cultural terrorism. Tell us more about this.
Good evening to everybody, and thank you for hosting me. In fact, what I meant through this idiom, that the cultural terrorism is trying to impose the Wahhabi way of life in Syria.
Yes.
This kind of unit thinking, the Wahhabi way of life. That is what happened in the so-called liberated areas in Syria. They imposed the Wahhabi life in Syria. That is what was happening in Syria for the 4 last years. Imposing this kind of very savage and primitive life on the Syrians. Syria is a plural country, multicultural country with many sects, many religions, and many races who have different ways of life, different cultures,
yes.
Cultures and different thinking. What the Wahhabis are trying to do now in Syria is to replace their own thinking, their own settled way of life on the Syrian people, and trying to evacuate Syria from their minorities, from its minorities, and bring all those terrorists of Al-Qaeda to be the new Syrian people. There have been many. There have been many genocides in Syria against Assyrians, against Kurds, against Alawites, against Shiites, who in fact form the Syrian fabric in order to make them leave Syria and bring that way of Wahhabi life to Syria.
Yes, stay with us, Mr. Naisi. Sarah Archer, do you agree that Syria was an exemplary country, a mosaic of all ethnic and religious minorities coexisting, like Mr. Nidal was saying, is a pluralistic society, and now that is being put to trial?
To be honest with you, I've been to Syria a couple of times, and it was a good country. It was lovely. Its people were lovely. It was developing. But obviously they saw that there was something wrong, whether it's a few people or the whole country. I can't tell. I wasn't there. I have no say over anything. But of course, if all these problems arise, then there's something had to be wrong. I know sometimes it's really sad because we say, oh, but you know, Iraq was good as well. But then, do we remember who was ruling Iraq?
Right.
Or you can't always look to the past. I just feel sorry for the Syrian people and all the kids, and I feel sorry for the whole Middle East because they have no one, no backbone. Okay, no one to help them.
Well, hopefully, the youth in England maybe will get into some activism to support the youth in Syria. Sarah Archer, also winner of Miss Portsmouth Award and the Miss Fire Award and the Miss Earth United Kingdom. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. Bye. Thank you.
Mr. Naisi, back to you in Syria. We know that the cultural fabric in the country is almost shattered now. Do you think it might be too late to reverse this damage? And will the cultural and ethnic mosaic that Syria is known for, will this get back to the coexistence that we had in the past? Will this happen again in the future, do you think?
Well, Mr. Carr, I'm sorry to be different with you in this specific area point. I think because I think that the strength of Syria is this fabric, this multi-fabric in Syria is the real strength of Syria. You know, all minorities, all enlightened minorities, in fact, all pro-Western or open-minded minorities in Syria are the ones who protected Syria and prevented dismantling Syria. I think that now they became stronger than ever. They are now they are the cause of preventing the total collapse in Syria. Those minorities felt that they are threatened to death by these Wahhabis, and they united together stronger now to defend this barbaric attack by them. In addition, we have also, we can't deny a great part of the Syrian Sunni who are also enlightened and who are in fact moderate and practice a very progressive and open-minded Islam who opposes in fact the Wahhabi way of life. I think the Syrians now are stronger due to this fact and due to the great threat which will destroy Iraq. I don't think that it will take a long time for Syria to become stronger in the future, because it is now, it is already strong.
Yes. Political analyst Mr. Nidal Aisi joined us from Syria. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kass. Thank you.
Father Ephraim. I thought you had to say something.
Yes, I just want to add that there are many governments and people supporting ISIS behind the curtains, if it's that right.
Yes.
And this like support, sending money, sending food, sending brand new cars, weapons, all this stuff. So please, from this TV, I would say to all the governments, please stop supporting ISIS. And after this, we would say to our governments in Iraq and Syria, please do something to them. We see like there is a political play in a game in this area. Why there is we spend in Iraq? I'm speaking about Iraq. We oil country. We have a lot of money. We spend like millions of dollars, and if it's not
more even
more for our army. So why they cannot go forward with to fight ISIS?
Yes.
That's really
surprising.
That's not logic. That's not logically. So I just need to say, please stop supporting ISIS. Please, our governments like Al-Abadi or Al-Assad government, please start to fight ISIS, and especially in Iraq, because we have a lot of money, and all the money go nowhere. Nobody know where does it go.
I guess we'll have to leave it there this evening, and as this episode comes to an end, I'd like to thank our guests who joined us over Skype, Mr. Barim Behram representing the Assyrian ethnicity, and Mr. Nidal Aisi joined us from Syria, Ms. Sarah Archer from the UK, and documentary filmmaker Hassan Al-Katib joined us from London, and of course our studio guest here, Father Ifram Ozan of the Syriac Orthodox Church. And let me close by emphasizing what the Lebanese archaeologist Joanna Farshach wrote on recent events, saying, "This cultural genocide violates all historic standards, from the preservation of antiquities. No one in history has bulldozed into the ground this way, the way that ISIL did. It is one of the worst invasions known to human history. These people are from the Dark Ages. Their destruction of Assyrian antiquities has no religious justification. The proof is Saudi Arabia's preservation of its own antiquities, including statues that predate the advent of Islam. The religious justification presented by ISIL is incorrect. ISIL is obliterating history on the principle, no one before me. History is written after me. And what is it doing is cheered on by antiquities dealers who paved the way for this reasoning. On this true but sad notion, I'll leave you today. Stay tuned to Straightforward Levant TV and be with you again very soon.
Peter established our church in Antioch, and Antioch is North Syria and South Turkey. Our people are really, they shaped the history of the area. They were before Islam, before all other people coming to this area. So as all Middle East, from Iraq, Syria, even Palestine, Jordan, all this area, were all Aramaic people, Syriac people. And we are a traditional church. We keep our liturgy, we celebrate our liturgy in Aramaic. We still speak Aramaic. We pray in Aramaic. We keep our language because we're proud that we speak the language of our Lord Jesus Christ. And it is really hurt us when it's difficult to us when someone forced us.
Shias and Kurds, amongst others, are also victim to the group's atrocities. But how will heads of these ethnic minorities confront this threat and will they trust their political partners to protect them?
Father Ephraim, tell us about the cultural and historic significance of Christian entities in the Middle East.
First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting us in today for Levant TV.
You're welcome.
It's really honored to be here with you, Carl.
Thank you.
And to answer your question, we Syriac people, or Aramaic, we speak the language of our Lord Jesus Christ. Our people and the community, we have been living in Middle East for 6,000 years, around 6,000 years, since 4000 BC. And we embraced the Christian faith since the 1st century, so we considered as the first Christian. And even before, when St. Paul
said that Islamic State fighters may have committed genocide against the minority Yazidi community in Iraq, as well as crimes against humanity and war crimes against civilians, including children. The report said captured women and children were treated as spoils of war and often subjected to rape or sexual slavery. The report came just days after Islamic State militants kidnapped 90 Christians in northeast Syria in their latest blow to the ancient Christian presence in the Middle East. Another video was also released by militants claiming allegiance to ISIS that appeared to show the beheading of 21 Egyptian Copts in Libya. ISIS militants have often singled out Christian and other minorities for persecution. Thousands of Christians fled Iraq's Mosul and Nineveh after ISIS's lightning advance last summer. The ISIS rampage through Iraq's Nineveh plains forced out Chaldean Christians and other minorities from areas in which they had coexisted for nearly 2,000 years. Maronite Archbishop Paul Nabil al-Sayar said ISIS was targeting all those who did not believe in its ideology. The Archbishop said they do not want to coexist with either Christians or Muslims who do not believe in their mission. But the Yazidis and Christians are not the only minorities in the Middle East who are being targeted. The Assyrians
to leave our country, that we think that we leave our history behind, and that
you're talking about Iraq, of course.
Iraq and Syria and these people, because we see now in London here and how the people are immigration.
Yeah, they're coming from the Middle East.
From Middle East to here. So I don't know. The future of these our people really
is endangered.
Endangered.
So, do you think, Father Ephraim, what is, in your opinion, the elements behind the survival of these Christian minorities in the Levant so far, until very recently? What happened when they were eradicated? What has kept them, despite the Ottoman threat, the Mamluks, and any other form of oppression that we witnessed in the Middle East historically? They resisted all that, and they still exist. They still own big monasteries and everything. But what was the element of their survival, behind their survival?
What do you mean by survival? Where are they? Do you mean in Mosul? Where I haven't seen any.
Hello, welcome to Straightforward. Over the past 2 weeks, a large number of media reports have appeared suggesting ISIS has destroyed many historical sites in Iraq, as well as a number of mosques and churches in Al-Mosul. Some members of Iraq's Yazidi minority are turning on their Arab neighbors, staging deadly reprisals against Sunni villagers they believe collaborated in atrocities inflicted by Islamic states on their community. Yazidis are returning to their northern home area of Sinjar and are uncovering one of mass graves after another after evidence of Islamic State's rule. The Christians aren't returning at all, it seems. Before we look at this and the recent damage affecting the Assyrian heritage in Nineveh, let me welcome our guest here at the studio, Father Ephraim Ozan of the Syriac Orthodox Church. Welcome to our show today. And before we get into our discussion, let's have a look at this brief report.
Last week, the United Nations Human Rights Office